Okay, so this is going to be a Lubith tutorial. Lubith is a WordPress theme generator. Now I'm in the Lubith application and I'm looking at a theme that I've designed. From the file menu you can load up any other themes that you have saved. From the file menu you can also create a copy of the theme that you're working on from the duplicate theme, which I'm actually going to do because I'm going to make a big mess of this theme. So now I've got a duplicate theme loaded. If I go to File and Theme Details, it says my theme's name and then Copy, which is just going to indicate that it's a copy of the theme that I cloned. Under the File menu, that's about all we really care about for now. If you, at the end of the day, download your theme and you want to restore it back to its original downloaded state, you can use this option here to upload a theme. From the main screen, whatever you mouse over is going to highlight a div tag. This div tag is responsible for its particular section. There are a few main div tags to pay attention to. The first one is the header, which I have selected right now. Basically everything inside this box is affected by the header properties. We have the main content area, which is here. Within the main content area we have the primary navigation box, which is here, and we have the main content area, which is here. Within the main content area we have a few additional div tags. We have the title tag, we have posted by date, some metadata, we have the content of the post entry, and we have some more metadata down here. Down below we have a footer, which we probably won't use for Webify templates, but for a WordPress theme you can certainly make some adjustments to this. I find actually it's better to do this part later because Lubith doesn't let you embed your own credit link back to your website. So what I end up doing is I edit this file later and insert my own link information. So basically, when you're using this editor, to the left you'll have the different tools, the different ways that you can affect the different elements that are on the screen. So each element you can do certain things with, like you can assign background color to. So in this case, let's assign a black background, sure. So I've assigned that background just by selecting it here, and I can choose the color from the slider. If I want a very precise color, I can type in the colored number value here. This is useful if you need to match an exact color from a website that you're taking inspiration from, for example. And what's also kind of neat is if you go to the background, you can set the opacity of the color by using this slider. So you can set a background to be entirely transparent, or you can set it to be partially transparent so you can see the elements that are behind it. So I'm just going to that actually looks kind of nice. I'm going to leave that like that. And what I'm going to show you now is how to set a background image. So you can't actually really see it very well, but I have the background area selected, and you can select the background area just by clicking anywhere outside of the other boxes. And when you have a background area selected, what you can do is you go to the background area and choose Upload Image. And you can browse for any image that you want to upload. And I'm going to use the background image that I created with a different theme. What I've got here is a single tile repeating background. I'm going to select that, let it upload. And what you can see is that it's being repeated horizontally across the top of the page. Now, there are a few ways to affect the way that the background image is displayed. So if I go to background and I'll go to image position, I can affect if I want this background image to be repeated horizontally. Right? So actually the image itself is just this tiny little sliver, and if I repeat horizontally, it takes up the whole size of the screen. I can also repeat vertically, but this background is not really well suited to repeat vertically, but that's how you would do it if you wanted to. You can also position the background on the page, so you can center align it, or align the vertical position, for example. So I can make that appear in the center of the page. And you can't really see what the horizontal alignment center looks like because it takes up the whole screen. But if this wasn't in the way, and I guess I can take it out of the way by going to adjust the opacity. But now you can see the background image is actually back there. That tiny little sliver is our background image in the center of the screen. So from the image position menu, you can affect a few cool things like that. So I'm just going to put it back somehow. Now this program is a little bit glitchy. For example, right there it was showing that my background image was top aligned when in fact it was center aligned. So what I actually had to do is I had to click to a different option, and I had to click back to the option where I want it to be put. And you will encounter little issues like this fairly frequently in this program. It's a great program, but it's got little tiny glitches like that, which are basically just a side effect of the web browser interface which we're using here. So I've got my background image. I've got a header background. The header background itself doesn't look too great just sitting as a square rectangle right there, so I'm going to show a cool little tool which will let me add a little bit of distinction to that blue rectangle, and this is under the border menu. So if I give it a border, what I can do here, oops, I haven't got it selected. Sometimes you'll have the wrong thing selected, so just watch out for that. Nothing happens, there's probably a good reason. Sometimes it will show something that you don't have because it's remembering from previous menus, like it was saying that I had a 9-pixel corner radius, when in fact I had no pixel corner radius. But moving the tool will trigger the proper area. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just giving this a corner. You can see that it's surrounding my corner, which kind of makes it look nice on the screen. I'm going to slide this down a bit, and these little scroll handles allow you to adjust position and size. So the left one always adjusts position without changing the size, and the right one adjusts the size. So yeah, that's how you do that. What I'm going to do here is add a little bit of a border though, because I haven't quite finished doing that. I'm going to add a border at 6 pixels, but you can't really see it right now because it's the same color, so I'm going to change its color to white. And now you see I have a nice looking border, which is a little bit too powerful on its own, so I'm going to add a little bit of opacity to kind of soften it up. Maybe something like this. And yeah, okay, so that's how you add a border, change the border opacity, change the border size, change the border color, change the amount of corner on a border. What else? We're going to look at, I'm actually going to take away this background image, and you can take away the background image from any element that you apply a background image to just by going to background and then going to clear image. And you can actually apply a background to almost any element. Like here I have the main navigation selected, and I want to apply a background image to it. So I quite easily can. And just sort of add a yellow paper looking background to it. Again, with any element on the screen, you can go to the border tool and add a border just like we did in the header. This is the main header navigation area, and what these three buttons refer to are not actually three buttons. They're one single button because all the buttons are the same. They just represent different states of the button. So in the first state we have normal, then we have over, we have pressed. So the normal state, we can change how the normal state looks as compared to the other two states. So I'm just going to make this really obvious. Let's make the normal state black with some white font. And I'm just going to take out the shadow because it looks kind of hard to read. So now the shadow's out. The over state will be white, that's fine, and the pressed state I will change to gray. Why not? So I'm just going to show you what we did by testing the theme. So now you can see that the pressed state is the gray, and the overstate is the white, and the regular state is the black. So it just kind of affects the different sections of navigation. This is specific to WordPress and not yet specific to Webify. It will be a feature that gets added into Webify eventually, as well will the drop-down menu, but for now this is a WordPress feature. And speaking of the drop-down menu, if you want to adjust how the drop-down menu looks, you just have to mouse over the over button, and actually I find that clicking it helps it to stay in place. And now I can mouse down to the background area or any of the other activity states. So submenu normal, over, and pressed, basically the same idea as normal, over, and pressed up here. You're just affecting the state of the button when it's been moused over or pressed, or when it hasn't been. Okay, so what we will actually probably end up doing with this menu is we'll adjust the CSS later so it's a relative size instead of a fixed size like we have here, but don't worry about that for now. For now, just design it how you want it to look. So pretty easy to adjust the position of the navigation panel. What this part is, this flower back here, is actually the logo section. What I've done is I've just sort of created a bit of art out of where the logo would otherwise be uploaded, and you can affect the size that you want for the logo, and just like anything else, to upload a default logo or image, you go to background, you go to upload image, and you find an image that you want to upload. Alright, the site name, and right down here you can't see because of the black background, but we have site description here as well. So I'm just going to change the text color of the site description so we can actually see it. And here we're going to affect the site title. Now, the important thing to remember about this part is that the length of the your site name is not going to always be exactly this long, which means that this bounding box needs to have some space for any extra length that the user might type their site title name. So basically, if the title's here and the description's here, and you only have this much space, if the user types in a longer name, it's going to wrap down to the next line once it gets to this location, and it's going to overlap the site description, which is not going to look very good. So if you just drag out if you sort of pre-plan the possible length of the site name and make it as long as as will look aesthetically pleasing, then the user is going to have that much more space to type in their site title name. And if they do something absurd and type a really, really long site name, then they're basically going to have to deal with that on their own, because there's only so much we can do here when we're designing a template. Same concept, same principle applies to the site description. We want to make it, want to give it as much space as we can. We can affect the position of the site name and site description from the type menu. You can float it to the right or center or left, and basically this just affects the starting position of the text. So in this case, the text is going to start here and go this way, and it won't go to the right, it'll go to the left because it's right aligned. Same applies to anything else that you have positioned to the right or center. And let's see. Let's look at the fonts a little bit here. So if you go to type, you can choose you can do a text opacity, which affects the transparency. You can do a font size here. You can do a few little things like underline and italic. But if you want to really affect the text style, you will go to text style. And here you can change the font. All of these yellow ones on this page and this next page here represent web-safe fonts. Anything beyond the yellow highlighted fonts may not render properly in the browsers of people who do not have that font installed. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I've seen a little bit of issue on a theme I've recently designed where the fonts don't render properly. This might work better with WordPress, but with Webify scripts the system is not set up to render non-web safe fonts. So just something to keep in mind. There's a lot of good options in the web safe list. You can affect the properties of the font, make it bold, italic, normal. You can affect the case of a font, so it can all be all uppercase or all lowercase. You can affect a few things like line through, whatever, a few text decoration options. In the previous screen we could only get up to font size 32, but in this screen we can get way up to font size 72. So if you want a bigger font, you can do that here. Letter spacing, word spacing, line height. Doesn't actually matter too much, because this basically assumes that the user is going to have more than one line height. Like, they're going to have a long enough site title name that it's going to drop down a line, and then we're going to have to worry about line height. So for site title, that's not too important, but for site description, it might be a little bit more used. They might have a longer site description, and site description can go down quite a bit without overlapping. It all depends on how you position the text and description, though. Shadow. You can drop a shadow to your font from this menu. You can change the shadow color here. I'm going to choose red because it's easy to see. You can adjust the horizontal position of the shadow here, the vertical position here, and you can affect how shadowy or how sharp it is here. You can also affect the opacity of the shadow here. Alright? So, I think I was talking a little bit before about the three main containers: the header container, the main content container, and the overall container, which holds the header and the main content, which is right here. What I'm actually going to do, sometimes these like to stick to each other, so if you want them to be a different size, you have to do them back and forth a bit. I don't really like to stick. Alright, well, maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe these ones just always stick together. Oh no, there we go. Alright, so here I have the overall container. Maybe I was clicking the wrong thing before. But anyway, here I have the overall container, and I'm going to just give that a background color so that you can see more easily what I'm working on here. And that background didn't show up because the opacity is currently set to 0, but when I change that, you can see the background color show up. So what we've got here is the main navigation box. You can affect the spacing of this box, like underneath each of the main entries is this little invisible spacer. So if you want to have more space in between the boxes, adjust that little spacer. You can also, affect the font size, type, etc., just like anything else. Same applies to links. You probably want to pay attention to what color your links are. The overall size of the box itself. Now, generally when we design, we like to have consistent amounts of padding. So from the Tools menu, there's a padding option. Now you can affect the padding like this, and you can see the numbers over here are changing as you adjust the size with your mouse. But if you want to have really consistent padding, you can actually go in and type in the number of pixels that you want for each section. So we have the top padding, right padding, bottom padding, and left padding. So you can see I set left padding to 0. There's no padding on the left. If I set it to 50, there's a lot of padding on the left. So I've just got everything set to 20 right now, so all of the padding of this element is consistent. The same applies to any element on the screen. Say you want more padding for your Hello World or your title, you can just do this, and it will affect the padding accordingly. The main content area right here you can assign a color or an image to, or you can also affect things like the border. So once again, that's not showing up because my opacity is down to 0, but I can change that. And right now you can see I've got a small rounded edge, no border, so I can affect that. I can add a border if I want to. And for example, let's say I want to match this border with this background. So I click this, I go to background, I get background color. The background color is this number exactly. I copy this number, and I go over here, and I go back to border color, and I put in that number exactly, and now I'll have matching border colors. So if you ever want to match up colors, just click the element, go to background color, get the number, copy it and paste it over to your new element. Right here we have, okay, so when we're designing, generally we want to aim for about 950 pixels in width. Right now this is pretty big, it's 1072 pixels in width. So I'm actually going to set this to 950 pixels wide. That's going to do some funky things. It's going to throw the rest of our alignment out of place. So basically, as we design, we want to try to keep things nice and simple for ourselves by working within the width that we've decided we want to work within. So now I'm going to have to go back and adjust all these other elements on the screen. And some of them like to stick. Isn't that annoying? Little features that are not perfect. There's the footer there. Anyway, I'm going to play around with it, and eventually the sizing will start to work. Sometimes you have to drag and pull from different div tags to get the sizing to be more like what you want it to be. So yeah, you'll just get used to it as you work with it more. I'm going to affect the padding here. I'm going to set some exact padding to 20. No, a little more, 30. 30, 30, 30, 30. Nice consistent padding all the way around. I'm going to move this up here. Well, no, I guess it's stuck here. So actually in this menu, there are a couple elements that you can affect, and I'm just going to I should probably talk about those really quick, because you've got the background area, which is that, and you can also affect each individual button. So for example, if you want to have a unique looking button, you can do that. So what this is, it's just a repeating background button that I created. I'm just going to apply that to each of my buttons. Now I can't see the font because it's the same color, so I'm going to fix that. I feel like the opacity is not great here. For some reason I don't see it as well. I'm not too sure why that is. Anyway, so the button area is separate from the button container, so you can affect both when you're creating your designs, and this is going to help create more interesting looking menus like the one which I created for the Diablo theme. There was quite a bit of button configuration or button stylization that needed to happen, and you can actually do quite a bit of stylization here. If you can't get the pixel quite right, like if you can't get it quite right with your mouse, then stop trying and instead just go to the numbers. It's 45, no, try 42. Nope, try 39. A little too less. So 40 is our number. And now we have exactly the right size. So it's pretty easy actually to come up with some pretty decent looking, I mean, I'm not putting much time into this, but you can affect transparencies and colors and backgrounds, and it's not too hard to come up with some nice looking themes. So I'm going to clear the background image there because I don't really like it. I'm going to move this over. Now here's another little trick with this program. The main content area will only get as small as these guys are here. So if you want to make the main content area smaller, grab one of these guys, make them smaller. And then if you want to adjust the padding, you can adjust like so. And once again, to get nice consistent padding, you can select the element, go to Tools, go to Padding, and affect the padding with the pixel number. One other little quirk that I've noticed about this is that the height of this can be affected here, but since this is a dynamic element that expands to the size of content on the page, there's no real good reason for this to have extra height, so what I do is I usually just tighten it up as much as it will go up, and that way there's going to be nice, consistent, uniform sizes. So this section here, currently I have with a background color, but there doesn't need to be one. You can take out the background color, entirely. You can take out the border. So now it's just borderless, boxless content on the page, which is possibly something you might want to do with your design. What else? Covered dimensions, because obviously you're going to use the dimensions tool to get anything to be a precise amount of width. Padding, we've covered padding. Okay, add remove elements. Now, it's not necessary. It's not absolutely necessary to have a logo. You can take the logo out if you want. It's not necessary to use the site title, site description. You can take these out. It will be necessary to keep the menu in and to keep the sidebar in. Don't bother with sidebar 2 unless you're designing specifically for WordPress, because if you're designing for Webify, it does not use sidebar 2, so it's kind of redundant. The post meta and post utility options can also be taken out. Once again, these are WordPress features, not Webify features, so they are redundant for Webify, and you can do what you want with them for WordPress. So that was found under the Tools Add Remove menu. We've covered the border size, border color, opacity, corner radius. We've covered typesetting. We've covered backgrounds. And I think we've covered pretty much everything. Yeah, good luck. Check us out at www.webify.ws and nerdpressed.com. That's nerdpressed.com for WordPress themes.